Okay, Mayor Lewis,
Here.
Vice Chair Vice Mayor
Here.
Mr. Carlson, Chair Mr. Conlon,
Here.
Mr. Enthoven,
Here.
Mr. Massey,
Here.
and Miss Birthday Diane Kramer,
Vice Chair.
the Vice Chair, yes, and Mr. Polito.
Here.
We're all here.
Good.
Do we have any public here today for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on. What is the appropriate, is there a place for member comments is in the past?
That's the real committee.
Say again?
That's the real committee.
I know that, do we do that normally here?
We could, if you wanted to put it on the agenda for the next, as the chair, you could do
Why
that
don't we
if
do
you
that
like.
next time?
Okay.
All right, then we should approve the minutes. Anyone,
So move.
second? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are stated approved.
I guess it's back on schedule.
I had one suggestion that it doesn't need to be incorporated in the minutes, but it might be helpful to have a list of the items that we expect to see at the next meeting. At the end of the minutes there, like the 5-year financial plan or whatever it might
Okay.
be, kind of a thing, so we.
On the next meeting date, agenda time, I can
Well,
put that.
we talked about some things at the last meeting, and I'm not sure they all got incorporated in here or not.
I'd say the to-do list sort of.
Yeah, just an
Future.
expectation list as to what we're gonna be seeing
No
coming
problem.
downstream.
And the 5-year,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Do you want to supplement the minutes with that on there? Well,
Not
let's do it next time.
yeah.
All right. All right, then are we consulting person?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Today we have one consultant and we have our auditor here, and he'll be addressing the financials later. But Mr. Doug Tucru from Nicolay Consulting is back with some new assumptions that we discussed at the last meeting. And he's going to go over and show the different scenarios and the changes of what transpired with our new actuarials.
The floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Robert. Hi again. It's been about a month, I guess, since I was here last time. I'd like to, I think, spend a good amount of time in this meeting just doing questions and answers. I don't know that we have to go over everything that we did last month. But what I thought I'd do is do a real quick introductory couple of comments and then go right into the new results and what we found out since the meeting a month ago. Okay. We did the last valuation we did that we talked about last month was as of July 1/11. And normally you're required to do a full valuation only once every 3 years. But there have been a number of things that have changed. So it was felt prudent to do a new valuation as 1 year later, as of July 1/12, to get things on a more current basis. Obviously, July 1/11 was getting pretty dated
Because of the outsourcing.
as of last month.
Because of the outsourcing.
Mainly because of the outsourcing. That was really what was driving it. And it turned out that it probably was fortuitous and that we did do a new valuation because the numbers did come out differently than what we had forecast from the previous year. The annual cost of the plan dropped about $80,000 from what we had forecast it was going to be for the current fiscal year. I think I have what the two numbers were. And by annual cost, I mean basically the annual accounting expense, what's called the annual OPEB cost.
Do you have an exhibit that you're referring to?
You might want to take a look at let's see.
Page 5.
Yes,
Yeah, let's turn to page,
it's page 5. Yeah.
is that what the, yeah,
Yeah.
I still have the old blank page. This is the first page of a 10-year projection schedule that we prepared. And if you go down and look in the first column of numbers, 2012-13, you go down about 2/3 of the way, there's an item called annual OPEB cost. And that basically is the cost to the town. And from an accounting standpoint, that's not to say you necessarily have to fund that amount, although you have, as I understand it, made the decision going forward that you are going to start funding this amount, basically. You see the number there of 582,525. Well, that number from our previous year report, we had projected about $664,000. So mainly, largely due to the outsourcing, or not downsizing, I should say. The cost is about, for this year, is about $80,000 lower, which is about 12% lower than what you would have had this year had we not done a new valuation. And that was largely due to the downsizing, but it also was due to the fact that CalPERS insurance premiums have gone down for this year fairly significantly for the post-age 65 premiums for the Medicare supplement. And the cost reduction was roughly equally divided between those two costs. So again, I think it was a good thing that we did do a new valuation. There are fewer people in the plan now, and also the average age of the working population dropped as a result of the downsizing.
So the CalPERS costs went down, and that met those costs for what percent increase over the prior year?
The CalPERS increases,
Yeah, if you take the new lower cost and compare that with the prior year, how much was the increase from year to year?
in terms of the cost, the number that we're looking at here,
In terms of the cost of town, yes.
yeah, I think the cost, if it had not been for the downsizing, the cost would have been close to level from last year. The $80,000 reduction, I think roughly was equally split.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm asking, okay, with a lower premium, lower cost
Yeah.
insurance, how much was that lower cost over the prior year's cost? How much did it increase with that?
well, the premiums actually went down.
That went down the prior
They
year.
went down from the prior year.
That's
For
kind
the
of
post-age 65 premiums, the pre-age 65 premiums went up, but the post-age
What was
65
driving that?
premiums,
Any idea? Lower cost? Is it Obama?
well,
That
nobody,
hasn't come into play yet.
nobody really knows exactly how CalPERS calculates these premiums.
Okay.
They have some internal reserves and things like that, and if experience is good, they may release some of those, so.
That's important to know.
It is, yeah, but anyway, there was a pretty significant drop, maybe, there are about 5 or 6 different medical plans that employees can choose, or retirees can choose from. But a number of them were down like 10% or more from the prior year, for the post-age 65.
And they split the premium between pre and post 65.
Pre and post-65, and the reason for that is Medicare kicks in at age 65. So the CalPERS medical benefit becomes a supplement to Medicare, and the premium drops substantially, because it's only a supplemental plan after age 65.
Yeah, I have a question. I didn't realize that our employees were on Social Security, but they are.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are.
I mean, isn't
And
it
Medicare.
often therefore?
They're on Medicare, they're not on social.
And they're not on Social
No,
Security?
because we don't
Okay.
pay social security, we just pay the PERS. here.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I didn't, I was just, I guess, making a
Oh, I
guess.
thought you had to be in Social Security for 40 quarters or something in order to be eligible for Medicare. So.
So what is the answer? Are they on social security?
No.
No.
No, we don't pay, on our payroll, we don't pay social security. We just pay the pension, the CalPERS.
Medicare's.
What about you?
And we pay
You pay
Medicare.
Medicare.
We pay the
Right.
Medicare, so that one.
That's allowed.
is-
They
is
can do
allowed.
Medicare
Right.
without social security.
Yes.
Yeah, social security, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's one or the other. You can offer both. Well, if you have the pension, defined benefit plan, then you don't have to pay into social security. But if you have like a 401K or something, then there is the social security that you pay into.
He's on
Yeah,
vacation
I
this
think-
week.
I think the rules are different for the public sector.
This was his schedule.
I remember 25 years ago or something at Stanford, we were contemplating, should we stay in Social Security and Medicare?
I don't think so.
And being a nonprofit, for some reason, we had a choice. I was
So what did you do?
Stayed with the got into Social Security and Medicare. I just thought
Unless he's gonna get
Medicare is gonna pay out and benefits a lot more than we'll pay in. And so we ought to stay in it just for the care.
Yeah, we also, as was decided last month, we ran several different iterations of these cost projections. We ran 6 altogether, including the one that you're looking at in the report. But there are 5 other 2-page schedules based on different sets of assumptions. And the assumptions that were changed were the discount rate, which the official rate is now 6%, which is what this report is based on. But we also reran the valuation and these 2-page schedules at 5% discount rate and 4% discount rate to see how much that would change the numbers.
You said 6% is the official rate. What,
That only means, really, all that means is that's the rate that this report is based on.
oh, okay.
You could decide today that you want to use a lower rate than that for your actual accounting purposes. You don't have to decide today. That could be, that decision could happen later.
I wonder as long as Bernanke is holding the interest rates, close to 0,
Yeah.
and where will we earn 6%?
Well, part of it you're gonna hopefully earn in the stock market.
Yeah, the equities.
Because you're the equity part of your fund, because your
Yeah,
money is in a trust now.
yeah.
And I think it's at least 50% equity, and so it won't be just interest rates that are driving
And it's a
it.
separate trust than the pension,
Yes.
It's totally separate from the pension.
but it's still run by PERS.
No,
It's
it's not
PARS.
run by PERS.
PARS, PARS. It's,
PERS does not have a fund for retiree medical programs. They don't have a fund for this.
And PARS is still a state agency.
No, PARS is as I understand it, a private agency. They formed a trust. They have, I don't know, 40 or 50 municipalities are, I think, participating in that. Can't remember the exact number. But basically, well, I think I said something that's not quite right. A couple of years ago, CalPERS did establish a trust fund for these types of plans on a voluntary basis. It's not like the CalPERS pension where everybody has to contribute so much money every year. But they established a trust, and there are a couple, 2 or 3 competing trusts out there that basically provide the same service. They're competing with CalPERS. And you folks made the decision to go with probably the second biggest player, which is called PARS.
Have
But
they
it
got a
is-
track record?
Pardon?
What is their track record?
I don't know exactly. I think that it's probably, they don't go back as far, of course. Their trust is only, well, even the PARS Trust and CalPERS are only both a few years old now. So we don't have a whole lot of history as yet, and we don't really get involved in helping you make a decision about that. I'm not sure how that worked.
Well-
That happened before you were here.
yeah. And well, PARS is, they have pretty significant amount of agencies, municipalities that use them. And the benefit with putting the money with them in a trust as, in PARS, rather than through us, is they have, their tools of investment and the rate of return is gonna be higher than what we would get. And so, and granted, we've discussed about the discount rates and the rates of return, and in the long term, using a trustee like PARS, getting a rate of 5%, 6% on long term is feasible.
There must be, similar to the document you provided us on PERS with their investment results and historical.
Yeah, I
returns.
can provide that.
There must be a similar information that you can get for us, so we don't each individually have to go out and research it.
I can give you, there's different portfolios that they have, just basically how risk averse you are.
Are the accounts segregated in there? Is there an Atherton pot of money, or is it blended?
I believe it's wherever we choose to invest.
It's a pool of money,
It's
but
in a
you
fund.
get to decide, that pool of money has like an equity fund in it, has a fixed income fund, maybe some other funds.
So then it must be
And-
segregated.
Right,
Otherwise
it's
it would be.
segregated,
right, so you can say, okay, I wanna be 50% in this fund and 50% in that fund, which is what you folks did. And I actually talked with the investment manager at PARS, about 6 months ago, when we were working on the previous valuation.
And what did he say?
We came down to, mainly what I wanted to figure out is what discount rate makes the most sense, based on what all my other clients are doing and so forth, and how the investment decision that was made as to how conservative you folks wanted to be. And you're kind of right in the middle of the, PARS has various options, but it came out that 6% discount rate, which is also the investment return, seemed to be make the most sense for what you guys decided to do.
And what I'm passing out is
And I agreed with that. We talked about it, and we both kind of did our own calculation and came out with 6% as being a best estimate discount rate. Now, people might have opinions about whether that's too aggressive, and that's partly why we reran these numbers at 5%, 4% rates of return.
to kind of.
But if you could get us some
Right.
information on PARS for the next meeting, that would be greatly appreciated.
We'll do.
Well, the board must have decided that, or the
Yeah, we did.
finance
Right,
committee
right.
passed.
It was done
That's what, yeah.
last fall,
Mhm.
yes, sir. And what I passed out as well was the OPEB comparisons, and I know that it was, we were interested in verifying, the committee was wanting to know how we are in relation to other communities. Now, if you look at the investment rate of return on their OPEBs, what we're going at 6% is pretty much in the middle. Some agencies, like Town of Woodside, 7.75%, Los Gatos is 7.25%, Hillsborough 7.5%, Sausalito is 5%, we're at 6%, Los Altos Hills is at 6%. And that's what was put in as far as their actuarial, what they use to compute and calculate their OPEB costs. So in relation to 6% for us, we're right in the middle. And also the healthcare trends are in the very bottom. You can see the various trend rates. And I think where we're at is probably modest too, basically. I don't think the lowest I see is Los Gatos at 5%. The lowering the health trend rate below that, I think over time probably wouldn't be feasible. So where we're at, and that's where we have these different scenarios between the discount rate and the healthcare trend cost. I think we're right in the middle, and we're not being overly aggressive or too conservative.
Does the FASB specify, they have some control over the rates that corporations use on their balance sheet?
They do on corporations, but you're not a corporation, so you're a government, so they don't.
What corporations do?
Corporation, this might not answer your question, but as to the discount rate, which we've been discussing, pretty much private corporations, it's dictated to them. This is, if your fiscal year ended on December 31, this is the discount rate we want you to use.
Yeah, what do they dictate?
Right now, it's really low. I think we're seeing we have mainly public sector, but we also have a number of private sector clients. And interest rates are so low now. And under the private sector accounting rules, it's fixed interest rates that drive the discount rate. And we're seeing below 5, 4.5 to 5 typically. Depends partly on what the cash flows of the plan are and some things like that. But that's purely a fixed income assumption. The rules for public sector accounting are different and say you should look to the fund you're invested in, and you should look to how you're invested in that fund. If you're more in equities,
You're saying that the accounting profession is mandating a rate?
the account for the private sector, the accounting profession pretty much mandates, they mandate a process for how you have to do the calculation. the rules a long time ago were that you would look at your fund, and if you were more in equities, then you could use a higher discount rate. But the accounting profession, at least so far in the private sector, has decided that you should only look at basically long-term bond yields. But we don't have those rules yet.
When you say the private sector, you mean FASB, I suppose.
Yeah, right.
Robert, at the end of the year, this fiscal year that we're in right now,
Yes, sir.
what will our unfunded liability be?
Right now, we're currently at 7.5.
Yeah, it's right at the, right.
And with the contribution, we'd probably be about 6.3 million as an unfunded liability.
Which numbers are you
Would that be
looking
the
at,
two
Robert?
point four table?
I'm seeing a slightly different number than that.
Well, I was
Well,
looking,
the numbers keep changing, I mean.
yeah, I was going with
I've got
our
three
last
iterations
one
here.
that we've
Right.
taken, and from our very first one that we've done, that was our current liability, that's what it is right now. But if it depends on, what we want to choose, or what the committee would like to recommend to the council to look at.
I
And to
thought the
pick.
council already decided how much we're gonna contribute this year.
Right, 1.2 million.
Right,
And,
so
and,
that's
and
already
based,
done.
and based off of what that was, that report, the net after, with that 1.2 million added, deducted from the actuarial liability, it's about 6.3 million would be
That's
left.
the current plan.
That's the current plan, yes, sir. But obviously, if we, as a committee, if you recommend any of these assumptions, then that will change. And then it will change at the end of the.
Well, we'll change the
financial.
council approves the change.
Right, exactly. And you could recommend, however, which assumptions we should take. The great thing about it is with this new assumption, it does take in consideration the changes in the overhead, the change in some of the rates. So it's taking that into consideration. So it's good to adopt one of these plans, or recommend to get these adopted, because now our OPEB cost is decreasing based off of this actuarial. And then in 2 years out, we'll do this again, and then we'll take into consideration how we fared in the discount rate, the rate of return, how we fared in the healthcare trend, and then that will adjust again.
There are two things I'd like to suggest that we shoot as goals. One is to be able to come up with a revised balance sheet for the town when we get through with all the assumptions on pensions and with healthcare costs and so forth. We show net assets of $46 million or something like that, with no long-term liabilities for these two major expenses that I think is really misleading. And so I get vision maybe one scenario with the traditional counting that's in our financial report, and then show another scenario that is a revised scenario based upon assumptions that the committee and the council said, yeah, we think those are most likely, or the ones that we ought to, or even a range. That would give a better picture, I think, to the community in terms of looking at reasons for partial tax or some other funding to help defray these costs over time based upon some plan or program that the committee might want to look at. And I think that we ought to the committee gets through with all this. It ought to be, codified or put into some structure so that future committee members can see the logic that this committee's gone through and why it reached the conclusions it did. And so it has that as a starting point to make judgments in the future.
I totally agree.
That's a really good
Exactly
idea.
what you just said.
What you remind me of is the federal level of Congress.
Right.
There's the Congressional Budget Office.
Right.
And they're supposed to do a projection of deficit and so forth under the assumption that current law stays in place. But it's turned out that was wildly optimistic, because current law says the end of next year, we're going to drop payment to the doctors by
There's no
25%.
continuity there at all.
And then every year they suspend that. So the CBO has also come out with something they call alternative fiscal scenario, which is not mandated by law,
Mhm.
but It is in their judgment what's realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good idea.
Does the accounting profession now require recording the unfunded liability in the private sector? I
Yes.
should know that.
Yeah, the private sector has been doing for a long time, what now is gonna extend to the public sector, basically is what's happening. You have to, just to back up for a minute, I think this addresses your question. As of June 30, 15, your financial statements issued as of that date for the pension plan, not for this plan, but for the pension plan, you're gonna have to show the total unfunded liability for the pension plan, which is, I don't know what it is now, I'm gonna guess $7 or $8 or $10 million. That whole thing is gonna go up on the balance sheet, whatever the difference is between the assets you have at CalPERS and the total actuarial liability, the whole thing is gonna come up on the balance sheet.
But it will not require this at that time?
This is probably gonna come, we're forecasting about 3 years after is when this is gonna hit, probably in 2017-18 fiscal year.
Well, is it optional? Can we put it on early?
Prospective?
You can do it, yeah, I think you can, if you wanted to
Let's
do it
ask
earlier,
our
yeah.
The footnotes in it.
Yeah, I think, in fact, I think they said in the statement, at least for the pension, they encourage early
Yeah.
adoption. So you can, yeah.
I'd sure like to see it, early adoption, and at least in the footnote, some prospective numbers.
But,
I agree.
Right.
That's right.
for the pension, GASB implementation, there's two GASB statements. So there's GASB 67, which is for the plan itself, so there's CalPERS. And then 68 will be the employer's accounting, so which would be for Atherton. So in order to early implement, technically yes you can, but in order for you to implement, CalPERS would also have to implement early. Because right now CalPERS, right now 67 is effective for fiscal year 14. So it's needed because of the measurement date for the total pension liability. So in order for this Atherton to implement it early, let's say if you implement early on 60 in fiscal year 14, CalPERS will have to implement it in 13, which means this year they will have to implement this year. So it's
But that's only for the pensions.
correct. That is for pension.
What
Correct.
about the healthcare one?
Healthcare.
CalPERS doesn't have any say in health.
Correct.
What about the accounting rules?
The accounting rules right now, excuse me, I have a little bit cough. So for OPEB, there's no, they have not issued any, not even draft yet. So I can see that you are correct. It's coming, but we do not know exactly when it is coming.
But is it optional if we wanted to do it?
It's
If we wanted to put the unfunded healthcare liability on the balance sheet,
Well, we can't.
no,
It's
yeah,
gonna
because
be an assumed number.
yeah,
Yeah.
So I think we could do it as
Yeah.
a footnote,
correct,
if we specify what our assumptions are.
correct.
But it can't be in the body of the
well,
financial.
on the private sector, it's the same problem. They have to estimate the future liability.
Right. Part of the issue here is that these rules, the healthcare accounting they haven't been issued yet. There's not even an exposure draft out there yet. We're pretty sure they're gonna try to make it as similar as practicable to the pension footnote, but there's nothing official yet at all. And when that hits, it's gonna be a bigger deal than when the new pension rules hit, because most pension plans in California are mostly funded.
Correct. Yeah.
They
You
have
talking about the private sector or the public sector?
Public sector,
Public sector,
public
yeah.
sector. Private sector has its own rules, but they're pretty much all have to be funded too.
Right.
But the healthcare plans in California are far from funded. They're very underfunded because the rules have only been with us a few years, so there's only been a few years worth of funding. So it's gonna create a lot of controversy. And I'm not sure, I know that GASB wants to make them similar to the pension rules, but there's some important differences between pension plans and retiree health benefits. And so we're not gonna know for a couple years what the rules are. We can estimate the rules, if somebody really wanted to put something, start to talk about it in their financials a few years ahead of time, you could do
Well, I'm
that.
sure we could put it in financial footnotes.
Sure,
Yeah,
As an
because
assumption.
you just wanna know how to calculate it, you know, you need enough
We
basis.
can state the assumptions.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, if you wanted to, there's nothing stopping you from doing that, if you
That's
decide
what
to
we're
do
really
it.
trying to do here, I think.
Well,
Put some assumptions.
I agree.
Or is it in there now?
right now, what you have is the actual valuation. So that is, but it's not the same as, it's not the same as, net OPEB.
There's no $7
liability. No,
figure in
no,
in the report at all.
Yeah, because right now,
You're only
on the
required-
books, there is a net OPEB obligations, but it's not the same as GASB 68.
They're very different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're quite different.
Footnotes.
Yeah, because, the net OPEB obligation is
Is shown.
smaller
Exactly,
than what
exactly.
our total obligation
Correct.
is. And so,
But did I misunderstand you? You were saying public sector pension plans in California are funded? I mean, they fund them, but I understood PERS was, 60%
Yeah,
funded.
correct.
I'm not sure what it is, but to be in PERS, you have to fund what they tell you. You know, and it's been around a long time, so there's been
You have
enough,
to fund or you have to pay what they tell you?
you pay
You
what
have
they
to
tell
pay the
you.
rate, and we do.
It's
And
not
we
funded,
fund
it's
it.
not fully funded.
It's not fully funded, but you're like at 70% maybe funded now. The retiree healthcare plans that we're talking about mainly today, most of those out there are only about 20% funded now. So
Yeah.
they're gonna have huge liabilities hit.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have that too, aren't we go with our payment.
Yeah, you are, unless you fund even more.
And I think we need to figure out a way that our financial statements reasonably accurately report that, state the assumptions and everything. But that, it's like, it's better to be roughly right than exactly wrong. I think,
good,
and I
yes.
think
Good
we're
point.
exactly wrong here because we don't have this.
Well, we start out with the audited financial statements, and we put down, what we think are, based upon these assumptions, are our long-term liabilities and what the net is.
Well, it's one of my questions about the Atherton finances is where is the present value of the liability of pensions?
Because right now, currently, as of right now, before the GASB statement 68 when it comes, right now, the liability is measured on your annual required contribution. As long as PERS tell you that every year you have to contribute X amount. And based on if every year Atherton pays it, then there's no liability on the books.
However,
Right.
if the new rules were in effect, I can give you a little information right now on, that would answer that, because I have copies of the latest CalPERS actuarial reports. And if you want to go into that at all, I can tell you just roughly
Can you tell us the bottom line, roughly?
what the difference
The
is,
numbers?
because they show the assets and the liabilities
Yeah, that's
in
right.
each
Well,
of
we've
these
got a
reports.
report from
For Atherton.
them, in our agenda.
That was the total as a
Find
group
it.
for CalPERS, that's in the agenda. But basically, I think what we're getting into eventually is what is the actual liability and what is the market value. And the difference is what's gonna be the liability, just like on the OPEB. It's kind of like a thing where it's twofold, like the healthcare was brought up first, and that's where they had the net OPEB cost. And then CalPERS is coming into effect, well, we need to show, or eventually do the liability, right? So one is already doing it, one needs to do it, and one's gonna do it before the other one decides, hey, this needs to be on the books also. This one's just saying, this is your net OPEB cost, based on when this plan started, or when the rule went into effect.
So the unfunded liability that we have here is based upon actuarial numbers that includes a 6% return on what we've put in the pool, is that right?
Well, that's a discount rate from what the liability would be by year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me,
It's not 60%.
just give you a couple numbers that are in these, I'm looking at these reports right now. And the latest one was as of June 30, 11. The unfunded liability, as of that day, based on market value of assets, was about $7 million for the safety plan. And about $3 million for the miscellaneous plan. So you've got,
For Atherton,
for Atherton.
yeah.
So you've got about 10 million, a little over 10 million. That's based on market value. I mentioned earlier, they do some smoothing of the assets so that you can measure it differently and come up with a smaller number. But that's, if the new rules were here this year, then.
For pensions.
For pensions, right. We're gonna have a similar thing maybe 3 years later, on the retiree medical.
So
Do we have those numbers? Did
Ten-
you just quote?
10 million for pensions, plus the 6 million we would have at year end for medical, is that right?
Yeah, let's see,
So
although,
$16 million.
I'm going back to look at this table 2-4 that we've been looking
So
at.
is that, Robert, $16 million from the $46 million in net assets then would be a theoretical new net asset number?
Well, once the CalPERS.
I understand that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
For what we're doing here, trying to second guess or trying to do a forecast, so that we can come to a conclusion as to how much we ought to be funding, kind of a thing, we need to make those kind of assumptions, I think.
yeah, you'd be looking at, the number I'm looking at for the retiree medical plan as of June 30, 13 is about 6.6 million. I'm looking at that number right there, Robert. So about 6.6 million for the medical and roughly 10.
Robert was using the number off the
From-
old report.
from the old
Oh,
one, yeah,
okay, yeah,
right,
I
because
was
that's
looking
the
at the
one
new
that we're
report.
currently are in.
Were you
Right.
looking at page 1 of your table, or which table are you looking at?
Let's see. Is that the one, I'm looking in the, do you have the big report?
Uh-huh,
It's page 5. Is a big
page
Page
5,
five,
oh, okay.
right.
Mhm.
And I'm looking at the 2 columns over up toward the top. It starts out actuarial accrued liabilities about 7.9 million. That's the top number of the second column.
Okay.
And then it shows assets of $1,338,000. That's the contribution that's soon gonna be made, as I understand it, into the plan.
Mhm.
The